Welcome to the Tao of Pizza, where we feature top logistics leaders, entrepreneurs, and supply chain innovators and share their inspiring stories with a holistic twist.
Mark Hiddleson here, host of the Tao Pizza podcast, where I talk with top industry innovators in the warehousing, logistics, and supply chain business with a holistic twist. Now, before introducing today's guest, Sarah Fateen, this episode is brought to you by Specialized Storage Solutions. I've been in the logistics industry for several decades now. And I don't look that old, but it's true. We provide industry-leading warehouse storage solutions nationwide. So basically, if you have a warehouse that needs racks, shelving, carts, conveyors, or mezzanines, we help with the design, engineering, installation, inspections, and repairs to help clients optimize their logistics operations. And Sarah, it's funny, sometimes people don't even realize we can actually help with permit acquisition services. We take a holistic look at your entire business supply chain ecosystem to develop the resources for continually improving your operation. To learn more, visit our website at specialracks.com. Give us a call at 707-732-3892, or send me an email. I always give out my personal email to podcast listeners. It's Mark Hiddleson at AOL if you're ready to take your warehouse storage and retrieval systems to the next level. And one last thing before introducing today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to the team at Seismic, especially Dan and Medina. He's been on the podcast, and he recently helped us with an extremely challenging permit acquisition. Check out the Danny Funky Cold Medina podcast on our blog. He's a great mentor of mine. He's awesome. And now it's time to introduce Sarah. Well, Sarah Fateen has been working in the material handling industry for the past 2 decades, though her heart lies in more creative endeavors. After obtaining a degree in fine arts in San Francisco, she met the love of her life, the world-famous Phil, and now they have a beautiful 18-month-old named Sunny. Since then, life has, quote-unquote, revolved around the sun, and Sarah is now finding her place in the world as a mom, person, and creative professional. She's been a great resource for our company, one of the most authentic and innovative people I know, and a great friend. Sarah, welcome to the Tao Pizza.
Thanks, Mark. I'm excited to be here. Always fun to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. It's been a while since I've seen you.
It has been a while.
Yeah, I think we were talking, it's been a year and a half. And
Yeah.
but it was one of those, when I picked up the phone to call you about this, we were talking about this, I think more than a year ago, of doing an interview. And I've taken the last 3 months off for we've had some business challenges and people getting different training. And so the podcast is the thing that got put on the back burner. But thank you. This is an awesome way to get the podcast back on track. So how did you get started with Submittal? Share a little bit about how you got involved in this awesome business.
Sure. Yeah, let's see. Submittal Services was started about 19 years ago. I was 18, and my sister, Nancy, and I had, just started working together. She was doing the permits for Seismic. And I mean, Seismic, it's our family company, right? So it's, people say, how long have you been in the industry? It's sort of like, well, it depends on when you start counting. It's really just in our blood. So she was doing permit management just for Seismic to begin, and then decided, hey, there's a lot of other people, a lot of other material handling or engineering or what have you that need permit management. And, Sal, to give him credit, he's like, I don't care who you take money from. He's not worried about competition. He's just like, spread, cast your net wide. So we incorporated, I believe in 2005, a year after I graduated high school. Nancy was running the show. Let's be clear. I was still, I think, just trying to figure out how I could be of help. But I did like it. And I think I needed a mentor like her. She had my dad when we were growing up. And so at that age, I had her. And she taught me everything I knew and asked if I wanted to start this business with her, be the vice president. And of course, as an 18-year-old, that sounds very nice.
When do I get my business cards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel very honored to be a part of that. And I think it it was nice to have a role like that where I definitely felt, I didn't know if I could fill the role, but it was nice to have something aspirational like that. And she really helped hold my hand. And, we started the business when her son was just born, Michael, who's now 19. And I remember him being in the office with us in his little carrier. And we just had a small office at Seismic at the time that we were operating out of. But it was the perfect thing for us to focus our energy on together.
Yeah, that's awesome. And all that, like, I look back too, and it was Casey had said something. She's like, "Yeah, we've been doing this on our own for 12 years." It was like, no, it's been 18. That was the same year we started our company. And I want to tell you, Permit, and I really didn't meet Nancy until later because you were the one working on our projects. The way we met was I had a great friend and mentor, is Ron Micus. And I always think like we met through your parents, but it was Ron that introduced me to Sal. And your dad, I mean, he's 50 years in the industry now, and it was 40 back then, or well, maybe 30. That's what I was thinking. Like I'm where Sal was when I met Sal, as far as like experience. And I knew that he was influential. He was involved in writing some of the codes over the years. So I'm like, I have to meet. And Ron, there was an event, and I thought it was an industry event. And Ron was like, "Well, it's for friends." He's like, "These are the friends." And I'm like, "Well, introduce me as a friend." So he invited me to the Catalina. My kids called it the Catalina wine mixer because of that brothers thing. And we just like immediately connected with your folks. It was like we met and with Ron, and we've been friends for so many years. And I couldn't imagine. I mean, he was right about the friendship part. And when you were talking about being able to bring your child to work, or do things like that, where you're still creating something that's the cutting edge. I mean, nobody was doing permit submittal services. Now everybody's doing it. Every material handling company has like their own internal one, but you guys created it. Was really, to me, makes you an innovator, that it was kind of nobody was doing it. And then you started this. Now 18 years later, everybody's doing it. And then you guys are still, I mean, I look at it, we work with you in partnerships on permits, but I was talking to somebody, our rate to get a permit is like half the national average, because I've talked to people how long it takes them to get it and what they do. And it's just been a lot of fun. And I appreciate you were the one I was dealing with. And I didn't realize you were 18 at the time. I thought you were like late 20s or something. I was just assuming you were, I mean, super professional. And it's I want to emphasize, it's the hardest part of this business. I mean, pulling a permit is harder than shipping 20 truckloads of racks, drawing the plans, and putting it in. I mean, so thank you for being such a great professional partner. So
thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about, you took a little bit of time off to go back to school in San Francisco. So you're from Southern California, but I felt like that made us closer, even though you didn't connect up here. But it's like Northern California, like if you live here. So share a little bit about what that experience was like, why you chose to go in that direction.
Yeah, it's funny. Initially I wanted to go to Portland, right? I wanted to get out of Southern California, or at least away. How do I say this delicately? I just needed to individuate.
Yeah.
I needed to build something that was my own, and I knew that Nancy, like, she had the company. Not that she was managing Seismic at the time, but I knew even back then that was her trajectory. I mean, she had been groomed for it her whole life and was happy to take on the role. I didn't have a clear path forward. I didn't know. All I really knew was that I wanted to do art and study art. So initially I wanted to go to Portland, to go to art school up there on an out-of-state tuition was quite pricey. So I was thinking about San Diego, and San Francisco was also on the list. And honestly, Mark, I missed an application deadline for San Diego. So it was like, well, I'm going to San Francisco. I had never even been there. Traveled up once to see the school after that, stayed in the Tenderloin. For people that, I don't know if you don't know San Francisco, the Tenderloin sounds good. Sounds like a tasty piece of meat. It's actually quite the opposite. I mean, I think it's called that because the cops in the area at the time they say that they could dine out on a Tenderloin dinner every night. So a lot of police activity, kind of sketchy neighborhoods. And so that was my first, I was like, I'm coming to this school. I came up with my friends. We stayed in the Tenderloin. It's like, this sucks, but it's not Southern California. So let's do it. And so yeah, I started going to San Francisco, stayed up there and lived in the Haight-Ashbury, and of course, shortly thereafter realized what an amazing city it was, in Tenderloin included. You have so many different types of things and different people from socioeconomic. You have a lot of socioeconomic diversity in such a small, like 50 square mile area. That's what makes it great. And it was not always comfortable, that's for sure. Sorry, my father-in-law just arrived, so he does something.
Awesome.
You know what that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I decided to go to San Francisco, and it was the best thing that I ever did because I met an amazing, artist community, friend community out there. I loved the school. All of my professors, it was really just, even I talked to my professors, they're like, the camaraderie and like the community that was built during the time that I was there was unique, even for them. We were close not only with each other, but with our professors. I have a professor, Phil and I, Paul Mullins on the East Coast in Pittsburgh, who we still travel to visit.
Awesome.
And, we have incredible relationships with all of those people still. It was really a golden era, as we call it. So I love that story because so much of my life was dictated by pure procrastination and dumb luck. And I think that's, great because it tells me that there's no wrong choices, right? Even when you think, oh man, can we curse here?
Yeah, it's my show. It's like, well, you remember Ron? That's what I was talking like Ron. May rest in peace. One of my greatest mentors. I think 3 out of 4 words he ever said to me were curse words, and I really liked it.
Yeah, for sure. He enjoyed a good F-bomb. But yeah, so much of my life was dictated by what I would consider a fuck up, and now I would just go back and want to hug my 24-year-old self and say, thank you.
Yeah, there's this great thing I saw. I was probably on a podcast where it said something like mistakes. God, I wish I could think of it to botch it, but there are opportunities to learn. Maybe you learn from us. Like, well, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? That's what it was. What would you tell your 20-year-old self? And it's funny. I write a lot, and I wrote a letter to my 20-year-old self. So it was like all these things. But the guy was like, I wouldn't tell my 20-year-old self anything. I would just be like, you got this, bro, because it's the mistakes that make a difference. Thank you for the chills on that one, by the way, because it is. That's a great and so you learn, and you came to Northern California, which is a different culture. And when you were talking about seismic and working in the family business, which you have an amazing family and your parents are amazing people. And I wanted that for my family. So that's, our kids are like, Cody is 29. And when people ask him how long he's been in the business, it's like, where do you start? Because we always say when he was 11, because he did actually go with me to a liquidation in Salt Lake City. And he was like organizing carts and all the stuff, like hand trucks we were selling. It was a giant liquidation center and had all this stuff. And he's 11 years old. And he's working while we're taking these conveyors down out of the sky and racking and all this stuff. And Cody's selling carts and pallet jacks. So 11-year-old is the official age. And the good thing, we didn't hire them because they were, we hired them because there's a rule of family that you don't have to pay your kids. You have a family business with less than 5 employees. But we paid them. I'm teasing. So Drake's involved in the business. Serena does our social media, and they all, you remind me, Serena went to college in Oregon. It was kind of the same kind of thing that, Napa was like our region where we were going, and Napa's not a great place for young people. I mean, it was great if you're 21 or 30 or 40 or 50, 60, but that younger. So Drake and Cody went to Southern California. So kind of the same. It is a different culture. I mean, it is a completely different.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. In San Francisco, I grew up in the suburbs. And we're in the desert, essentially. We are in a desert. So it's hot and you're driving everywhere. So to move to a city where you can, talking about San Francisco, where you can be free without a vehicle, day or night, you can travel anywhere you want. It was just what I needed at that time to feel that sense of independence and build that confidence that I didn't have down here. I love it. I definitely no regrets.
Yeah, and you're glad you're home.
Now?
Well, now you're close to San Diego, right?
Yeah, I'm in North County, San Diego right now, and I mean, I'll be honest, my heart is definitely has a place in the Bay Area still. Also, what Phil and my husband and I talk about is you can never go home again. Is the Bay Area great? It is great. It's beautiful, and I love that we have friends up there still to visit, but it's certainly not what it was when we were there, which was, living around the corner from our best friends, not having a kid, right? So you're just, you have a lot more freedom. We all had a lot more freedom, and now everybody has sort of been dispersed to different parts of the state. And yeah, I know that any feelings that I have might be of a different time that we might never get back. So now having a kid, having a bit more space, right? We have a nice big piece of property here in Southern California, and being close to family. That's really what it's all about. I can't imagine raising our son 400 miles away, not being, able to see my parents or sister or my husband's parents and sisters who are just down the street from us. I mean, we could not do it without them. They're all an amazing help with Sunny, and also just socially, I am a social being, and I can get in my head a little bit and kind of, maybe seclude myself away from people. Not sure if that's grammatically correct, but it's nice being down here. I like having a father-in-law that just pops in to say hi. I need that, right? I need people to hey, snap out of it.
Right.
And if I was too far away from everyone, it'd be too easy to retreat. So it's a blessing. And of course, I mean, you can't beat San Diego weather.
Yeah, Serena moved down there for grad school, and it's hard for us to leave. We helped her move. We helped her find a place. We visited, and every time I go, I'm like, they have those little real estate magazines. I'm looking at it, go, hey, what is it? San Diego, and I want her to come back for all those same reasons. But my game plan is wherever my kids, I do want to be. I want that big family. It's just so important to me. It's one of the things I love about your parents, and then they have a family that's beyond the family. It's like an extended, like a chosen. I feel like we're cousins or somehow related in this bigger group of people who all we try to get together once a year, at least every other year, and share more of, we've done work together, business, but the relationships and the family and seeing people that you love, we were, I think the last time we saw it was your baby shower.
Wait, you weren't in Palm Springs when Sunny was just about a month old?
We were. So that was 2 years ago. So not this July, or June, but the June before. So June of 2022.
Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right, Mark. Our whole family is in Egypt. We have a couple of cousins on the East Coast, but other than that, aunts and uncles, cousins, everyone else is in Egypt. So for sure, you and Micus and all of the other people that have been, involved in our family business, coming to the Sizzle every year, they have really been another extended family here, people that you can go to for advice. And the Solomonsons, Tom and Sue Solomonson, Trevor and Courtney Solomonson, their kids, I mean, I'd say like they're closer to brothers and sisters. Tom and Sue were like second parents to us. Sue was huge in inspiring me creatively as a kid. She was loved craft, and Courtney, her daughter, could not have been less interested. She wanted to be on the golf course with her dad. She was a tomboy through and through. And I was just like, I'll sit and color with you and paint for hours. And I totally, give her so much credit for igniting that fire in me that, kind of set the course for my whole life. So yeah, that resonates with me for sure. You guys are definitely more like family.
Yeah. And so going into the creative, what are some of the creative endeavors that you have that you're kind of creating this vision? Sonny's 18 months. So what's your vision for the more creative endeavors? I'm excited to are you gonna host a podcast?
I have totally thought about that. Yes.
Yeah.
My friend and I wanted to do that a couple years ago. We got the microphone. I think we did one interview. We never did it again. I love the idea. I love talking clearly. I love talking to people. As far as creative endeavors, I mean, I still try to draw every day if I can. Now I kind of just used my iPad. I got an iPad during COVID. And now with Sonny, he's crawling around all over the place, getting into stuff. I can't really whip out the paints every day, but this is really nice. My future goal, I mean, my happy place has always been being in an art supply store. That is just, even going, Mark, in the stationery aisle in the grocery store, where they sell like Sharpies and a couple notebooks. Every time I would be like, maybe my mom will let me get something. Because it's just possibilities, right? An art supply store is just possibilities. And I went to school for fine art, and I think I always thought that I would be a working artist someday. And I realized after I got done with school that what I really liked more was organizing the materials and helping people develop their creative confidence. My own creative endeavors, drawing and whatnot. Yeah, I love creating things for people that I love as gifts and things like that. But I never really thought that that's what I would be doing as a career. And now being in Vista, which is a very creative community, we don't have an art supply store here. We have things like Michael's and Hobby Lobby, but no community to serve our community. We have nearby places like Oceanside and Escondido, which have a lot. And it would really mean a lot to me to build something here in Vista. Starting small would be just an art supply store. And then thinking, if you kind of let yourself think as big as you want to think, right? And dream, what else could it be? Could it be a space where we could have classes, right?
Yeah.
Could we have studios for working artists to rent? Could we have a mobile component where we can, bring supplies to communities that don't necessarily have access to our space? And it kind of hits on all of my my values, my personal values, right? Collaboration, community, all of that stuff. So
in health and well-being, one of the last classes I took of my master's degree in holistic health was a art and transformation. And we were doing just acrylics on, he wanted us to use canvases, but we did a lot on paper just because canvases are expensive. Like, speaking of the art supply store, you need these students. I didn't realize a good canvas is like $60 or something. And the paints aren't cheap. So if you're doing this as a class, I'm like, oh, this is just a class, I'm going to do 10 paintings. So we did a lot, but it is, and his definition of a studio is someplace you can set up all your stuff and leave it. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. You're talking about with having the baby, there's stuff you can't just leave it out because they'll get into it. But like a studio, because he said it doesn't matter, but just because it takes a half hour to set up, that half hour you can create. And the other thing I was trying to think, I'm like, man, we have a really good one in Napa. I don't know what it's called. It's like, I I love going in there. I mean, I would buy stuff. I would be painting all the time. I kind of like you. I get this feeling like I like glue sticks because I like to take stuff, cut it out, and glue it on there, because I'm thinking, isn't it just
Cool.
amazing? It made it in a stick. When I was a kid, it was like paste and you ate it. It doesn't, but everything. So I'm like, this is so clever. I can just do anything. But Cartons and Crates is an art store. It's very good art. It's like highest quality stuff. And they do packing and shipping. And it's like a warehouse. And so I don't know how those two things, but it's kind of like the same supplies that you need tape, you need a lot of the same supplies. And then the business model kind of feeds, like you might come in to ship a few bottles of wine, or you can ship anything. You can ship steaks or whatever. And then you might go buy, they have art supplies, or you just need whatever. But it is these days the business model, like put a Taco Bell with the Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's the same. Or mobile. There's so much stuff. And I love what you said about the communities, because that's healing. Like if you can bring that healing experience, because it is rad when you get these paints, you get it out, you get dirty, you have to wear clothes. Like that's kind of one of the things I loved about that art class at JFK. I usually wear like a button down shirt, but I had a white shirt that was like, okay, whatever gets on this thing, it's fine. It's going to get, and it just kind of felt cool to put that, what's like, okay, put me in a different space. Like we were talking about a space that you can step into and just feel freedom. I get a little bit of creative freedom. So
that's so cool.
Yeah. So we talked about flipping the script and having you ask me a few. This could be a dress rehearsal for you. And I think I'll say this about personal growth. If it's been my passion for 20 years, it's one of the reasons I got a degree in holistic health. And this was a total shocker. Hosting a podcast for a year, I've done 45, 50, I don't know, like around 45 or 50 interviews. It's been the biggest personal growth experience I've just ever had. It's preparing, it's the conversation. And one of the things is like pick the top 30 people you want to talk to. And so you make a list, and just going through that list, like Sal was on that list, Matthew was on the list, you're on the list, all the people, and making those connections. I'm telling you, it's beyond my wildest. And it was for average, like the ROI is my company. I mean, it's not free to put on a podcast. And I have like the team and the editing and everything else like that. But there's a business payoff. Like I had a client, I went in and I was thinking, I want to make a good impression. I'm going back to my old days of selling, and how do I get in this? A big, big client. And this guy's vice president's a big guy, and he gets in there. He's like, hey man, I saw your podcast. I'm checking out. I was like, yes, I'm in the door. I'm already kind of have. So I'll help you if you want to talk about that after. And I think you'd be awesome. And it's just a great way to make connections, network, everything you're about, really having different conversations, of just the stuff that comes up. So
I love the idea. I think it would be great to do. I like to do lots of different things. I think what I'm looking for is, I don't know about you, Mark, you seem pretty self-motivated. I think that this is great because it's collaborative, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I have a hard time with motivation. And I think what I'm looking for is my creative, like, counterpart, someone that I can, and maybe it's not just one person, maybe it's a group of people. We moved from the Bay Area where we had really cultivated this group of friends that was more like family. Again, you're all moving away from your family, your friends become more like your family, your chosen family. And we knew we wanted to move so that my husband could go to grad school, and we wanted to start a family. We wanted to be closer to our families down here. All that said, it was very hard to leave that group. And communicating via video chat and phone call is lovely. I mean, I'm so grateful that we have this, and my friends and I will do like virtual art hangs. We'll both draw, or paint while we're talking. I'm working on creating that here and building a group of people that could help. We could be accountability partners for each other, and sort of embark on these creative journeys together. Because when I am feeling that lack of motivation, that person can help like just pull me out of it. So yeah, podcasts are great. Interviewing people in general is great. Even talking about starting an art supply store and studio or community, whatever you want to call it. This is all just daydreams at the moment, but a big part of that will be going and finding cool places in the surrounding cities, or even like you said, in other cities in Northern California, finding places that are doing it right, and talking to those people, right? And maybe that's a good opportunity, right? To just like press record and ask them some questions about their journey and their vision and how they cultivated that sense of community and made decisions, and just kind of be comfortable in that discovery phase. And I am excited about that.
Yeah. And it gives people access to you. Like that's my thing, is that I've had kids that I coached in junior high basketball, because that's been one of my most passionate things of giving back to a community and everything. Kids have heard the podcast and then they've shot me a text or something on Instagram and said, "Hey coach, I heard that, you were talking about," and the amount of connections it's available, or even if somebody can contact and say, "I'm interested in that," or your mobile thing that you talked about. And, my contact information is on there, and it's not like people were like, "Well, how many thousands of hits are you getting?" And it's the highest one we have on our blog has like 300 hits. LinkedIn gives you these metrics and everything. There's like 1,700 or something on, but it's for me, there's been a couple phone calls or like one meeting that I went to that guy, like it was a huge win for me of just work, of doing personal work that I enjoy for the process of doing it itself. The ROI has become like, I like doing this. This
Right.
is, I think you'd be awesome on it. Just you're dynamic, you have good energy, you have all the things of like community, like you talked about, given it's not just about you and what can you create, but it's like, how can you make your community a better place to have these resources? So
Yeah, definitely.
So what is something you want to ask me? Or
I want to know more about your master's degree. And well, first of all, what did you get your undergrad in?
economics. It's
Okay.
actually,
And you're
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and remind me what you got your master's in again?
Holistic health education.
And what was the amount of time between those two degrees?
It's a trick question, and I'll tell you why. Because my undergrad, this goes under the great list of fuck ups, because it took me 8 years to do my undergrad. And after 8 years, and it wasn't like it took me 8 years, because I also got 8 years of business experience because I worked full time that whole 8 years. So like the last 3, I kind of had to go to school for 6 months, then work for 6 months, school for 6 months and work. So when I graduated, I not only had a 4-year degree, I had 8 years of experience. But instead of sending my diploma, they sent me a letter saying, "We're sorry, we made a mistake on your degree audit, and there's still 2 classes you have to take."
No way.
And I had already taken a really good job in this industry as my sales background. And I did a year in psychology my freshman year. Then I did 2 years of engineering. Then I did 2 years of construction management, but then it was 5 years, and it was going to take me like another 5 years to do construction management. So I flunked this test in statics. It's a class called statics, and Sal's probably the only one who knows what statics is. But I've studied, and I was the kind of person, like, I didn't have to study in high school. I just got straight A's. It was just like, I get it. This is what they want, the teachers. But we got to this thing in math where I had to study, and I studied for like 2 or 3 hours for this test. And my score was like 17 out of 100. And graded on a curve, and like the best score was like 43. But still, even if you put the 43, if you got a 17, that's like, you suck, bro. And the teacher got up and he made a speech, and he was like this. His name was Donald Nostrand. He's like, if you want the easy classes at this university, they're on the other side of the campus. And I was sitting there, I was like 23, 22. I was like, I didn't know there was an easier side of the campus. Because I've been going to school for 5 years. So I went to the other side, and it was like philosophy, which I love philosophy, economics, humanities, liberal art, all these things that I thought were really cool. But I look at the econ, and I was like, really, with what I want to do with my life, I kind of have a background in, drafting engineering concepts and all this math that I've taken, calculus. So I switched to economics just because that was the closest. My goal was, what am I the closest to graduating in? And I don't care what it is. It's philosophy, everything. It turns out economics was what I was close to. So that's why I picked economics. So
Great.
to answer your question, I went back. So that was 1996 that I graduated, and I'd already taken a job. So I didn't go back. And I wanted to get my master's degree in 2000. So I had to go back and finish. So in 2000, I went back, finished my undergrad. And that was kind of like a permit process, because with college, every year has a catalog right. So like I was 1988 catalog rights. And so all the rules you had to graduate goes by that, and it changes. So when I went back, they're like, well, no, now you don't only have to take these 2 classes. You got to take all this stuff, because now.
No way. There's more?
Yeah. And so I fought it, though. I fought it. I said, hey, this was your guys' mistake. And luckily, I still had all the documentation and everything. Like, I was approved, and I paid $25. I was one of the, I was really pissed off about this, because I paid $25 for a degree audit, and it had, it was by hand back. Like now everything's computer. And so it's like, I'm not that old, but you filled it in by hand, and it was like 3 copies, and you kept a copy, and then you gave them a copy, and then there were other copies to give everybody else. But like, you guys screwed it up. So it took them a couple weeks. It's like getting a permit, right? It took them 2 weeks. They got back to me and they go, okay, you're right. And then the 2 classes I took were nutrition and metaphysics, because I could have taken anything I wanted. And so
cool.
that kind of propelled me. And when I got into the metaphysics, which is kind of really like, how do we look at things? And it's more of a holistic, not just logic, pure reason, a lot of like nonlinear thought experiments. And I just dug that. And so that's kind of what, and I actually, what intrigued me the most was studying the mind-body problem, because I'd been an athlete, and in science, I'm like super scientific, but I'm also super spiritual. And I believe, you can have a balance of faith and reason. So I've always wanted to just stay in that mode. Like I haven't figured everything out. And the metaphysics was cool, because it gets you to that point where these are the things we haven't figured out. Like, we haven't figured out the mind-body connection. It's not 2 things. It's just one thing. We're trying to make it 2 things. You're never going to figure it out, because you can't have a mind without a body, and what we call mind, and all these like questions. But what I really cared about was how I could use mind-body information, techniques, not just finding out, oh, well, it's your neurons that connect to this, but like, what can I physically do to enhance that connection and be more integrated? I call it integrated or integral, of kind of walking your talk or anything. That's what made me fascinated. And I prayed about it for a long time, because I was going back to school. I wanted to get my MBA in finance, because I was like, well, now I've got 8 years of experience and everything, and like, I just want to make more money. Like, that's kind of been for me. I wasn't poor growing up or anything, but my mom was a single mom. She was a teacher. So we, compared, like, we probably had plenty, but I always looked like, since I was young, I want to make a lot of money, and not even necessarily for myself, but I want to be able to be generous and do projects and do community service and everything. So, but I prayed about it, and sometimes things just hit you, and I'm like, this is obvious. Study the mind-body problem, like whatever it is, just study that, because you're passionate about it. The 2 classes I took were nutrition and metaphysics. So that's kind of like mind and body. And I was like, when I had the choice, I didn't figure this till after, when I had the choice of any classes I could have taken from the whole university, those are the 2 that I chose. So turn the fuck up, opportunity. That's one of my biggest platitudes, is opportunity and adversity, or life is filled. I had this plaque that said, life is filled with opportunities disguised as unsolvable problems. So that's how I got to holistic health.
I love that. Mark, we've known each other for over 15 years. I never knew any of that. I mean, we see each other for a weekend once a year, and it's a party, right? There's alcohol, there's lots of, activities and whatnot. We don't necessarily have the opportunity to get deep or like talk big, but I mean, what a lovely experience. Again, to be able to learn these things about you, that's incredible.
Thank you.
And you said you were an athlete. What did you do?
So my goal when I was about 12 years old, I was going to be a professional athlete. And I thought football player because I've always been kind of a bigger guy, strong and athletic. And I had a coach, I was like 12 or 13, and he said, man, football, you used to have really gifted body in a certain way, like bigger, faster, everything's like you probably, um, you know, the chance of being a professional player. He goes, you really have to start. What if you're going to be a professional? You got to start when you're 13, 14. You know, like you look at these Olympian athletes. And so I wanted to become a professional baseball player. And I started when I was 12. And so it was like any edge I could get. I was training, I was taking classes, I would go to clinics, and I actually learned my first meditation. They didn't call it meditation, but it was a visualization technique of visualizing yourself succeeding in sports. And it was like a coach's clinic. It wasn't even for 12 and 13-year-old kids, but I was at this coaching clinic, and it was the coach from Cal, actually. And I was writing about it in my book, and I had to go back and look at who it was. It actually turns out to be this super famous coach from Cal. And my goal was to go to Cal. I actually turned in my so yeah, I had these athletic experiences of dealing with, and again, it was mind body. I was a pitcher, and nerves would get to you, or it was any sport. I played basketball, baseball, and football, and I knew if you were afraid or things were like, your body would betray you. Like you'd freeze, or you wouldn't. It's hard to explain in sports, but if like you're self-conscious and you're the pitcher, you're screwed. There's no way you're gonna have to learn ways. And so I use this visualization technique of just seeing myself doing it the way I practiced it and rehearsed it. And I've done a lot of research since then, and there's studies that say if you practice something in your mind, like an athletic movement, even lifting weights or throwing a ball or things, if you practice it the correct way, because there's like a correct way to do things, right? And it's never usually your natural way. And if you can rehearse it, it is the same benefit as actually physically doing it. So I've used that kind of stuff through business. It's the same thing with business meetings. If you get in there and you're scared, and then somebody asks a question and you're afraid, and then it's like and then you get in your car and you're like, oh, I could have said this, this, so I used to do a lot to, and that still happens to me, by the way. It's not like you just,
you don't one day just have it.
Yeah.
Do you have like a pump up routine, or like a mindful, like a pre-meeting warm up that you do for yourself to get yourself in the right mindset?
You want me to do it? It's called a chicken dance. It's a great question, and I do, and I don't. It's one of my favorite movies I've seen in the past few years. I watched it with Serena, my daughter, is the Tony Robbins I'm Not Your Guru deal on Netflix. And it's funny, I'm not a big Tony Robbins fan, but I've read all of his books and everything if I had an opportunity to go to one of the seminars. But it's called I'm Not Your Guru. And he had a routine for getting pumped up, because he's giving a presentation to, 2,500 people who've paid, I don't know, they're expensive. They're anywhere from like 2,500 to 10 grand, I think is his tier. So he has this thing and he dips in a pool, and we're going to cuss on this one. He was like, I created this motherfucker. So I was, when I was watching that, I was doing stuff like that. But I would say my practice, I have a basic practice that's pretty simple. It's like 2 to 5 minutes, and I do it every day and sometimes throughout the day. But it's basically centering my energy field. And I have a PDF for this. I can put it, I have all the exacts. I've written it up so I can share it with other people. But it's basically centering my energy in the front and the back, the left and the right, above and below. Because you tend to have all your energy in front of you because your eyes are in front of you, and it's like what's coming at you. So it's sort of a breathing exercise. It's sort of a visualization, and it just helps me. Starting out as a meditator, I'm really, I've got ants in my pants. Like I don't want to do it and everything, but working with my energy, and there's an energy field you can measure, and it can affect where your attention is. So energy follows attention. And so I just do that kind of all the time. And if there's a specific, so here's the other thing I do. If there's something like that, I will call somebody. Like the other day I called you. Remember I said I was going to call Sal, but I figured he was on the golf course, so I'm going to call you and ask him the same question I was going to ask Sal. And for me, it's a chance to say it in a container, and then you could play building official, you could play customer, you could play Sal, you could play. I don't know if any of us could play Nancy, but then I'll just call Nancy.
Sure.
But I will. So as a practice, I'll even call my old boss. Somebody that I work for. It's been 18 years since I started my own company. But I'll call him and say, hey, I've got this client. It's a situation, and I want you to role play. I call it role playing. And sometimes in certain circles, they're like, well, who dresses up as the nurse and who dresses up as the cop? It's like, I'll wear whatever, but there's people that I'll call Danny. Danny Medina, I mentioned.
Can we just take a minute to recognize the greatness that is Danny Medina?
Gosh.
I'm so happy. I did not know that you interviewed him. Can't wait to hear that. He has also just been like, obviously like a uncle, but also sorry to take the focus up for a second.
No, this is perfect.
When I went back, moved back from the Bay and started working in the office again, he was my mentor, because we just, I don't know, we just like had this connection. He is also someone that is very just calm and centered and incredibly well spoken. And I'm just so grateful for the connection that we shared when we were there, and we still have even now. And now his daughter works there. She's wonderful, Victoria. But yeah, he's just such a fantastic human being. I really love him.
Yeah, he taught me this business when I was 27 when I started working with Danny. And like I said, I was an eager beaver. I was making a lot of mistakes too, because I was just like, oh yeah, this is it. You cut a PO and do this and Danny kind of harnessed it and helped me. He taught me, and he taught so I work for a distributor. Like in our business, there's like manufacturers, distributors, and customers. And I work for a distributor, and you could buy it from multiple vendors. Like there's multiple rack vendors to choose from. And as a distributor, they kind of had a way of like, let the factory do everything and just take whatever their quote is, mark it up and sell it, but don't really get involved in all the behind the scenes engineering prelims or anything like that. And Danny kind of pulled me over to that manufacturer, because he always worked for a manufacturer. And he pulled me onto that side as a sales and kind of gave me that behind the scenes education. So then when I went to clients, I knew so much more. Even my competitors have been doing it for 5, 10, 15 years. I was able to kind of pass their knowledge because Danny would coach me, and I would call him. He's one of the first people who's like, Danny, I'm going into this meeting.
Call and ask about anything. Yeah.
Or one time I called him. It was probably right when so one of the reasons I went back to school is the economy tanked. Like I saw my income was just like straight vertical because I was on commission at this distributor. And then in 2000, 2001, I forget what year, I had like a 40% decrease in commission from year to year.
Yeah.
And so I called Danny and I'm like, man, it's slow. And he was like, you know what, man? He goes, do you have any golf clubs? I go, yeah, I bought some at a pawn shop. I wasn't really like a golfer. That's the other thing. I still fit in your group, even though it's a lot of golfers. But he goes, take your golf clubs, go out. He goes, this business is weird. He goes, it goes through cycles. He goes, there's going to be times where you're not going to have time to go out and do something like this. So if it's slow, just get your club. And that was one of the best. That kind of actually stayed with me, because you do get this low level anxiety of owning a company. And when you start your pay thing too, is going to be like, okay, rent is this month, the payroll is this month. So they're this. Even back then I was just a salesman, but I was on straight commission. So that making space to take care of yourself when you have the opportunity, and it doesn't always come when you want it, but I'll never forget that phone call, because I was like, dude, we've been crushing it in 3 years in a row, and now .com or whatever, whatever the narrative was at that time, which I try to avoid the narrative. That's something else I do as a practice, is try not to get too much involved in, I have this graph. I'll put this on there too. So like your human potential goes like this. It's a curve that goes up and up and up like that. Like that's your pure potential as a human. And if you're really into personal growth and everything, it really looks like this. And there's these other curves down here. One of them is the social narrative, and the social narrative just kind of goes up and down. So if you ride that, it's going to pull you down. And then the other narrative is like your body, like you're talking like there's times you just don't feel like it. And it was like people, whenever I tell them this, they never believe it. But there's time. I had a conversation one time with it was a supplier or somebody, and he goes, just call them and work your magic. And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of the fucking magic. I don't want to do the magic. It's like, why always? But then he goes,
Yeah.
you know what,
Yeah.
brother? He goes,
Why does it always have to be me? Why do I have to be a bigger person?
he goes, it was a good friend of mine, a supplier that I work with, and he said, you know what? He's like, the magic's what it's all about. He goes, if that's the way you feel, then, you know, and that's the other thing. I've been surrounded by the people. That's why I got really emotional when I read your thing, your pre-interview questions, because I think of the people like Danny, Ron, Sal, Jeannie, you know, that they've just given me way more grace. And that was the one thing I was trying, was like, what is it about Sal? What is it? What does he have? He just has enough grace for himself and enough that just has overflowed on me so much that I'm like, wow, that's the kind of people I want to be around. That's the kind of person that I want to be. But sometimes I do, I know my body just said, so don't follow your body. That's my other thing too. And for me, if I make a commitment and I don't feel like fulfilling that commitment, most of the time I'll do it anyways, and then it ends up paying off. But don't follow your body or biological, because the biological goes up and down and the social goes up and down.
Yeah.
But your potential, you're always learning, fucking up and learning.
The trend is always upward.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah. I remember talking to Nancy. So my sister Nancy also, you know, health and wellness is her driving force. And she does this thing every year called 75 Hard. 75 Hard is a mental toughness challenge that you do for 75 days. You have this set of rules, like you have to do 2 workouts a day for at least 45 minutes. One of them has to be outside. You have to read 10 pages of a nonfiction inspirational book, et cetera, et cetera. And I've never been like fitness forward. I mean, I might dabble occasionally. She's just very constant. And I remember starting it and then talking to her and like, man, I just like really lost my motivation after 10 or 12 days or something. Like, I was like, Nancy, how do you continually want to do it every day? She's like, you think I want to do it every day? She's like, oh no. There are definitely there are days that I don't want to get up early and like it's dark out, there's a time change, like get up and work out. And she's like, I just do it anyway, you know? And I just hearing her say that, knowing that there were times where she wanted to say no and just like stay curled up in bed, was like, oh, we're not that different. You still feel it too. You just power through it. I thought that she just had this like endless energy, you know, which she has in her own regard, that she always wanted to do it. And she was like, absolutely not. I am chasing the feeling that it gives me, not like the action of like, oh, I love working out. I love how it makes me feel. And if you can focus on that good feeling and not the actual thing itself, it's a lot, I don't want to say easier to stay motivated, but I am a lot less hard on myself and give myself more grace for sure.
Yeah. There's the don't beat yourself up. We're getting close to the end too, and it's like we could go another half hour, but I'm really glad you brought that up because Nancy's been on too. She was one of my first interviews, and she started to get into that 75-day challenge, and I was nervous. It was one of my first ones. And then I kind of stopped, but I wanted to go more into that. I'm glad you did, because it is, and the more you do it, the more you know what that feeling is after. I got into kind of the same pattern with lifting. Like I lift weights. I started lifting weights to be a better athlete. Then as I got older, it was to stay in shape. Then as I got my 40s, it was to prevent injury, because it's like the more muscle, because I'm falling down, you know, I'm trying to do surfing and motorcycle, off-road, everything. It's like, but it's a mental, and I kind of got out of it. It's funny, during the pandemic, I laugh, and it's because I hate excuses. And
Mm.
I used the pandemic as an excuse. There were some events that I was going to be in for competing to train in, like cycling, and it keeps me really fit to be training because I know I'm going to be riding a bicycle 64 miles. It's like you don't miss one of those days because you don't want to be going straight up a hill and then you don't have the legs for it. So for me, I've used those. So the race got canceled. So then I didn't train. And I'm like, that's the opposite of what I believe in. Like if you looked at my list of values, it's like train in the rain, train for the game, train for the game, train for the game. But something about the pandemic, whether it's my business or my family or just not leaving the house, like I don't know, it was a weird funk. I gained about 15 pounds and I'm just about, I probably lost half of it. I'm not the person to try to lose it all, but like it took me 3 years to put it on. Like I'm going to take it off in the next 3 years, kind of be more proactive. But I got out of it. And I got out of lifting weights, and I get so much, like when I'm done, I don't feel like lifting. I never feel like lifting. I don't say that. Sometimes I do, but 9 times out of 10, I don't. But then after, the feeling after, sometimes it's just good to lift heavy shit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
And yeah, you got to move your body. You got to, push it to its limit sometime, and keeping commitments to yourself always feels good.
build trust with yourself. That's exactly it. It's you make a
Trust
commitment
with
to yourself. So you're
yourself.
building trust with yourself. And once you trust yourself, other people are just automatically. I mean, I make a lot of micro commitments of, things I'm going to do. And just as the practice of making a commitment, it's like, make a commitment and keep it, make a commitment and keep it. They're micro commitments. And you just try not to make too many to my wife. She's going to crown me if I don't come through on it, but not to myself.
Yeah.
It's commitments. That's another thing that I would put under prep, more than like a pregame, but I do a pregame. It's not as good as Tony Robbins. To stay prepared is to, and just, I don't know, be surrounded by beautiful people like you. That's the secret, to be able to call somebody. And this
Definitely. Picking up
podcast.
the phone and just calling someone, right? I think my husband Phil is really good at that, right? He'll we'll be on the ride home from dinner. It'll be maybe 7 minutes home. And he's like, "Should we call Leanne? Should we call Trevor?" And I was like, "Oh, we only have 7 minutes." And in my head, I think because I'm just so long-winded, I'm always like, "Okay, we're gonna need at least an hour just to cover the basics of what's going on and how we're feeling about it." But he's like, "No, because most of the time, especially if you're just going to call someone, like they might not have a lot of time to give, and you can really get a lot in just that 7-minute conversation." And I'm trying to really do that more, like just pick up the phone and call people. Especially now having kids and like friends having kids, is harder and harder to schedule a time to have an hour and a half long form discussion. You might only get a quick 20 minutes when you're cooking dinner or something like that. And that is way better than nothing.
Yeah.
So I totally am a big proponent of, just pick up the phone and call someone and get that energy,
Yeah.
and give that energy.
So anything else you want to ask me? Before I have a final question. I have 2 final questions, actually, especially for you.
Okay.
Do you have anything else?
Well, I kind of want to talk about my parents a little bit, but before that, I want to know, I guess I want to know more about you and Casey and your history. How did you guys meet? And I know that I think last year was your 25-year wedding anniversary. And how do you continue to stay connected with each other after all of this time? Because obviously, I love Casey. She's amazing, and like this ball of energy. And I want to know more about your relationship.
So I could lie and say it's easy. So the first thing I'll say is there was something that I heard. So Casey and I, when we met, we were in our late 20s, and we would known each other from mutual friends before, but I had kind of been through relationships and divorce. I mean, I was kind of a totally different person from the time I was 20, till I was 30, or my late 20s. And I was in this thing where I was like, I'm just going to date. I'm just going to permanently date because I had messed up my relationships. And then it was, my first wife was an angel. It wasn't her fault. People were like, oh, it's always two ways and everything like that. And I could probably, if we put it under that, we had the list of the fuck ups and what you learned from it. But I was just like, I'm not going to make that commitment again. I'm not going to take that chance because, and looking back, I didn't know at the time, I just didn't have the emotional maturity. And so I was like, I had a really good job. I graduated from school. I was making a lot of money. I was like, I'm just going to be a bachelor for the rest of my life because this is the lifestyle I like to live. Parties, lots of people, not really commitments of, I won't say the obvious, the obvious things that are in the unwritten fine print of a relationship. And Casey kind of looked me up. She knew that I was working at this car dealership in Davis right at the end of going to school. And we just kind of connected to be friends. It wasn't, and I was telling her, I'm like, I got a jet ski. I got lots of girlfriends. I like to party. We got this place in Folsom. I went to school in Sacramento and I had this jet ski. I would take it to work with me because I get off at 3 and I would just go get a group of people, go to the Folsom Lake.
That's amazing.
And people, I would pull up, and because I was in the car business and it takes a long time to do a deal, and people would say, look, I don't have all day, mister. And I go, well, see that jet ski over there? I was like, I want to get on the lake as soon as it's done. So we're going to put your deal in the fast lane. You want to go? So we just started, kind of creating a friendship. And she had Cody at the time. Cody was 2 or 3. And it was kind of, I get really emotional when I talk about it, but I fell in love with Cody and Casey at the same time. And it wasn't something that I even saw coming. We just had this great energetic connection. He was he was an avatar of a kid. I mean, he was 2 or 3 years old and I was playing catch with him on football because I was like 27, 28. And it's just like, well, what can this, what is, and he could take everything. I fell in love with Cody and Casey, and it was wild, and it's been a wild ride. I would say we never stopped working at it. I get, and I didn't marry Casey because I could live with her. That's the other thing that I didn't marry because I could live with her. I married her because I couldn't live without her. And it's amazing how two people, when you're together, and we spend a ton of time together. I mean, she's involved in the business. A lot of times when we eat lunch, as couples, we probably spend more time than anybody I know. And we have different paradigms. And she has a lot of grace. And I'm working on it. It's but it's a partnership. She's been a great mom. I mean, and our kids. I mean, our kids have been we have the most amazing kids, and it's mostly because of her, or I would say it's at least 50-50, but like as a mom, I mean, a mom is different. A mom, she creates the environment that our kids grew up in, and I don't know. It's just been we've had a lot of fun. We've traveled together. We just continue to create memories. You know what? Having friends like Sal and Jeannie. I mean, let's segue into that. It was your I'm gonna throw Sal and I on. I can do this. But we were just sharing stories. Like Sal and I are a lot alike in the way we look at things. And Casey was just able to talk to your mom and everything. She's like, oh my God. She's like, you just described Mark. Like, that's Mark. That's Mark. But we're kind of in the same, I mean, we're in the same business. It's not because of that, but we have a vision of, I don't know what it is, building, expanding, focusing on other things, but it's to have those kind of friendships where you just say, yeah, I'm going through that too, sister. I got me one of those, and he's awesome.
So
you know what I mean?
Invaluable awesome to have friends that you can be honest with about maybe the not so glamorous parts of being in a relationship. And I think that's amazing that you guys have that. That's really incredible.
Yeah. And it's the friendship. And we were talking, divorce is like 50% or 70%, whatever it is. We were looking at our friend group of the people we're if the people we go motorcycle camping with, the people that, are friends, everything, it's like, we're like 95%.
Whoa.
And it's not because, we're all knuckleheads, I mean, like, it's not, we're not geniuses. It's just, we keep trying. I mean, we keep learning from the mistakes, the fuck ups, which I've made a lot of them. that's why my curve isn't like this. I've learned from every mistake. So my curve has went from this to like that. It's because of all the mistakes. If I would have made less mistakes, the curve would have been like this, because they were all learning opportunity. But thank you. That's a great question too. I didn't say, because I felt a little on the spot when you asked me that. I didn't see it coming. That is a great question. Thank you. That is a great question. Yeah.
Great. I think that our partners are so much a part of us, and I feel like I can't talk about myself without talking about Phil, or even my family. So obviously, yeah, I think Casey's such a magical being, and I love hearing about how how can you still be best friends after 25 years of marriage, and kids and building a business, and life can be really difficult sometimes. And my grandpa always used to say that. He used to say, life is difficult. He'd sit down on a chair, go do something, and I'm 8 years old, like, what do you mean by that? And now I'm like, oh, forget it. Yes. And, my mom always wants to remind me that life is beautiful too. And for sure, it is both. It is equal parts both. And I think if you have a partner that can help you, stay on the same team and remind you of that, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And you just, another thing, I don't, people could take this the wrong way. That's fine. But we had the same faith is the best word that I could use to describe it. I don't mean faith as like a superstitious faith in like invisible, but like a faith that the right things were happening for us at the right time. Like, we didn't plan for this to happen, but we just had faith that like this kind of relationship, this kind of closeness, this kind of intimacy, this kind of, it was an energy. Like you said, she's an energy. And a lot of our friends have said nobody could ever handle being married to you, and nobody could ever handle being married to her. And I'm probably you. You've seen this a lot on her personal side, and it's fun. A lot of people who've only seen the personal side haven't seen on his business. They don't realize, like, oh yeah, this guy runs a business. He's got 30 jobs going at the same time. They think, well, just party animal. But
Right.
we're both really serious about the serious stuff and fun about the fun stuff, I guess. But it was the energy, and it was undeniable, and it wasn't like yeah. And so I'm really pumped. 25 years. Yeah. It's
25 years. Amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah. And Phil's amazing. Like, my favorite, I didn't know if I was going to tell this story or not, but the first time I met Phil, we were at a party. We were by the swimming pool in Palm Springs Hotel. I think it was the Hyatt or something. And we'd had a few drinks. The last time this ever happened, they had pictures of vodka and soda with like raspberry, and there were pictures. And the thing is, it's Palm Springs.
That can I just say, that seems like a Fateen, that's like a sizzle invention. That's not like the hotel passing them out. I think that was us saying, hey, so you don't have to come back here 10 times within the next 30 minutes. And we just have a picture. I love that.
So we had a few of those, and it's Palm Springs in July or June. So you got to drink them faster to get hot. So anyways, we'd had a few, and Phil was eating a piece of pizza, and it slipped out of his hand, and it fell in the pool. And like a ninja Navy SEAL, he grabbed it quickly and just immediately shoved the whole thing in his mouth. I'm like, I love this guy. So ever since then, I mean, we've seen him jump off buildings. I think that was the time he jumped off.
Oh my gosh, I think that was the same.
He snuck our kids onto the roof. Yeah, he snuck our kids onto the roof of the Marriott during the thing. I mean, I love Phil. Yeah.
That's a great story. And yeah, I love that. He's so silly, and he is totally someone that works very hard. He has some of the best work ethic of anyone that I've ever known. And just like my dad and my sister, and he learned it from his dad. And I can't think of anyone better suited for me. That's for sure. I say that all the time. When I'm doing something ridiculous, I just stop and look at him. I'm like, thank you for loving me. I don't know who else would be able to put up with it. And yeah, I mean, to that point that you were saying earlier, we got to a place in our relationship, and I swear I said this first. And now we tell the story. He's like, I said that. I was like, no, I was, after a while, all the stories.
That means it's going to last.
Yeah. One day I was like, I realized, like, I had a very conscious realization that, and this was before we got married or even engaged, that there was no more like, well, what happens if we break up? It was like, how are we going to get through this? And he says that it was his idea, but I think it just speaks to the fact that we felt the same way, right?
Yeah.
We were just on the same page from day one. We were also friends first, ran in the same circles, saw each other separately in relationships, like good, bad, or indifferent, like you saw, from a really objective standpoint, how this person could be with other people. And then, we came together, and I think the timing was just right. But yeah, we think about that, when we have issues now, it's not, you never even think about your life without them. You're just like, how are we going to get through this and be on the same team and be stronger than we were before? He's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, and you guys are great leaders. So here's why you both think it was your idea, because great leaders will lead their team and the team will think they did it themselves. So you both think, so it was your idea and he thinks it's his idea. You're a great leader. If it's his idea and you think it's your idea, it's like you guys are a great team. And marriage it's a spiritual, relationship, meaning my definition of spiritual, it's pulling yourself to your highest potential. That's the other thing. It's been really humbling. It's like if I have a problem with something or issue, it's an opportunity. First of all, I don't even use the word problem. It's like, I'm going to throw that out. It's a challenge. So I'm going to throw that. It's an opportunity. And going through that process, she's the best. She knows the best version of me better than I do, almost, I guess, is one way to look at it. And I'm constantly living into that and being humbled to be, I'm still a good dad, I'm still a good husband, and everything. I still got a long way to go to get the Tipperary. Yeah.
We are exquisite works in progress.
Yeah. So we're getting close. I want to ask you any other question you have for me? Because mine is
not off the top.
Okay. So I like to ask, is there any new tech that or first of all, what's your favorite podcast?
Oh, I love podcasts.
Yeah.
I love podcasts so much. Well, very hard to pick just one, but the newest one that I've fallen in love with is called Mr. Ballen's Medical Mysteries. And it's just all of these bizarre stories from history. And every episode is just a short, maybe 30 or 45-minute mystery where they tell the story of the person and the family. And of course, eventually the reveal of what was going on. And I don't know, like, I love true crime, right? That was how I got into, that was like my main introduction to podcasts. But after a while, right, true crime, I don't know, but it gets a little stale. There's only so many. I'm like, I can't listen to another fucking story about a serial killer. I don't care. It's all like senseless, horrible. But what I do really like is a mystery. And for whatever reason, medical mysteries and like the history of medical innovation and like body snatching for the purpose of medical exploration, like it's so gritty and dark and like wonderfully fascinating. So that's a new podcast. It's only a couple weeks in, and I'm just like chomping at the bit for more. I can't wait every Tuesday. There was one this morning, and I was very excited about that. So That's my new jam.
So anyone
but then
who's listening,
a ton of other ones, yeah.
So what's another couple besides that? And I'll put a link to them on the show notes.
Yeah. Great.
So everything we talked about, if there's a resource or anything, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. So
check the show notes, people.
Yeah. Mr. Ballen.
Mr. Ballen's Medical Mysteries. Another one is lighter, right? Because you got to balance I learned that going deep in the true crime podcast for years. You got to get some humor in there. There's a show called Bananas, and it's just weird news. It's these two guys. One of them is a comedian named Kurt Brownler, and then this other guy, Scotty Landis. He's a comedy writer. They're just so funny. They're best friends. It's lighthearted, and it's just like, you know, Ontario man is caught smuggling 21 pigeons in his pants going through airport security. And you're like, what? So it's nice and light, right? And it's a great palate cleanser in between all of the heavyweight.
Nice. So you use it as
Heavyweight is another great podcast.
What's that?
I was going to say Heavyweight is another great podcast.
Oh, Heavyweight.
Yeah, that's like human interest stories, just people telling their tale, right? Yeah, I could go on and on, but those three have been really hitting hard lately, I think.
Awesome. And that's that we have one of our yard manager listens to podcasts for entertainment. I really like the Joe Rogan podcast, but I've only listened to it about 5 times because they're 3 hours. I get into it and I could watch it every day because it's so interesting, and he kind of was the father of podcasting, and he wasn't sure if it was going to take off, but he just had the idea of getting his friends. It started with his friends and around like UFC and the things in martial arts and what he's passionate about. And he's a stand-up comedian, and it's good. I love comedy because it's a way to talk about the tough things and kind of make fun of it. So they're not really taking a side. And even if somebody pokes it, it's like, okay, yeah, can we really talk about it? And then you don't have to, you can just laugh and go, yeah, that hurts. Or this is so, and you gotta laugh. Yeah. Laughter's the best medicine.
Yeah.
Sarah, this is so awesome. Speaking of laughing, we had some good fun. I told you this was going to be fun. You were such a great guest. Thank you. Really fun. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Amongst the ranks of even, all of the people that I think are so incredible. My dad, my sister, Danny. I'm sure you'll get my mom on.
She's not.
She's got to be next.
Yeah.
Yeah. She is like, she's wonderful because she knows that everybody has something remarkable about them, and she wants to figure out what it is, right? She'll talk to you for hours. And I love that about her. And I feel she is my connection to the two of you. I mean, maybe it was business that brought you in, but in my eyes, Jeannie is the connective force between you and Casey and us. I feel like Sal brings him in and Jeannie keeps him there, and with the late night conversations over gin and tonics and cigarettes. So I would love to hear what you guys have to say. I feel very blessed to be here. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Tao of Pizza podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.